Welcome to SportsBeat Live from sunny Kansas City, our weekly chat session about the Kansas City Royals. We talk Royals with you. Join us with your questions and comments. And before we get started, let's thank our sponsor, the University of Kansas Health System. So the four of us today will talk Royals. We've got... Oh, wait a second.
Yeah.
Sam's here.
I'm the one you can count on, apparently.
Sam is here. We've had some conflicts with some scheduling conflicts with Lynn and Vahe. They'll be back next week. Lynn's conflict is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And we're going to spend some time talking about that.
For sure.
But what I want to ask you first, Sam, is there are, let's just say you have the option to watch two baseball games today. You can only pick one. One is the Kansas City Royals playing a 3 o'clock game today against the Milwaukee Brewers. Good Brewers team, right?
Sure.
You can see Lorenzo Cain, and it's the Royals. The other one involves a minor league team, the Omaha Storm Chasers. They start at 11 a.m. today, and they take on the St. Paul Saints. It's a minor league game versus a major league game, but which one might have more interest to you?
The one that Lynn's going to today.
That's right.
Yeah.
We're covering that.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I think we all, and not just in baseball, although I think this is truer in baseball than other sports. We make too much out of our debuts and what happens. I remember Tuffy Rhodes. I don't know why that's in my head, but he went like 4 for 4 with like 4 home runs or 3 home runs or something.
Runs, yeah.
He was Willie Mays
On opening day.
and then he wasn't. I don't know why that's in my head, but so it doesn't. If Bobby Witt Jr. goes 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts today, he's still a good player. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And if he goes 4 for 4 with 3 home runs, he's still got some work to do. But it's just the change in level is interesting, and it's something new, it's something fresh, and I don't know how true this is, but it used to be said that like AAA, AA was like high-end talent, like a lot of talented
Right.
guys that needed some refining, and then AAA, and I'm thinking of pitchers mostly, is guys that maybe had some big league experience. Didn't have the high-end stuff, but were kind of crafty. Could eat on a hitter's weakness a little bit. And I don't know how true that is. I think the pitching. I've heard this from a couple different scouts. The pitching in that league is not very good. Guys are raking. I actually looked this up the other day. Teams are averaging almost like 5 runs a game.
Wow.
On the league on base percentage is like 350 or something like that. The Royals. Or the Storm Chasers, I should say. It's like most of the top 10 in that league in home runs plays in Omaha. It's pretty. So they might put up some numbers, but I'm just curious to see how they adjust to that different level. Especially, well, I'm talking too much because there are a couple things that I think are going to be interesting to watch in the next few weeks with them.
No doubt about it. And one of the things that's going to be interesting to watch is to see if Bobby Witt Jr. gets off to the same kind of slow start that he did Northwest Arkansas.
Yep.
You're suggesting, just based on the pitching, and maybe there's some ballpark factors too, that we might not see whatever it was, 5 for 30 out of the gate or something.
Yeah, I don't want to paint this as like, mid-90s Coors Field or whatever, but the offensive numbers are, the guys can hit in that league. And you're right, like Bobby Witt Jr. especially, that first 20 games or so, 18, 19, 20, he was struggling. And rightfully so. Kid had played 37 games in rookie ball or whatever, and then spring training, and then he's, there's some grown men in AA, and those are really good players. And so I am curious about that, or if it's just, look, man, he's figured it out, and he's going to keep launching. And then obviously the biggest jump from AAA to the big leagues. But one thing I want to, besides the start that you just mentioned, both those guys are raking. Pratto and Witt Jr., especially their power numbers, and on base. But their strikeout numbers are pretty high too. One's played in 60 games, the other's played in 61. One has, I think, 67 strikeouts. The other one has like 80. That's in AA. I want to keep an eye on that. I want to see, and with Witt Jr. especially, his strikeout numbers have actually dropped as his power and on base has gone up. Right. So he really seemed to have figured something out. But I'm just curious about that. They've got some swing and miss, and I'm curious how that plays now at AAA.
Yeah, that is something to keep an eye on because you would hope that the swing and miss numbers would be lower in the lower minor leagues, right? And you'd see a little increase going forward. But you also make a good point about the quality of baseball in AA versus AAA. Maybe that's changed a little bit because of the new minor league system in baseball. You do see more. The Royals still use Omaha as their 4A, basically. That's Edward Olivares is out there playing center field now. Kyle Isbell is there. We know Daniel Lynch, who's starting today, and Jackson Kowar are up there. These are all guys we think are going to end up, in a Royals uniform later in the year. They have been in the Royals uniform. So I think maybe there's a reason why Pratto and Witt didn't go from Northwest Arkansas to the Royals. They went to AAA Omaha because I think the Royals brass think that's just the next logical step for them, right?
Yeah, I think that those days of, and look, there's a million different perspectives on this, not just 30 different clubs, but inside of each club, there's different scouts that have different ways of thinking about this. But there was a time where a lot of guys did make that jump from AA up. And those days, I think, those are rare now. And I think they're going to be even more rare going forward, or at least in the next year or two. Because I've heard it said, and again, there's a million different ways to think about this, but I've heard it said that AAA now is more like how AA used to be. That all the reorganization, there's just not as many guys, and it's just not what it used to be. And so that jump, I was going to say if and when, but when it happens for those guys to get to the big leagues, maybe that's part of what we've seen. The struggles with Lynch and Kowar. And I know there's other guys, Wander Franco, there's other guys around the big leagues who have done just fine when they get called up.
They always seem to. Those guys on other teams always seem to make that adjustment.
And look, Wander Franco is like a different breed. I mean, that guy's been the #1 prospect in baseball for a few years.
He has. And maybe Witt is that guy, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, the one thing, there's no question about either of those guys defensively. Both those guys are really good athletes. Pratto, and some of this is just kind of lazy comparison maybe because he's left-handed and he was drafted by the Royals, but there was an Eric Hosmer comparison with him defensively. And he's come, I mean, if this continues, his timeline has really picked up from what the Royals had a right to believe they had in Pratto when they signed Carlos Santana to a 2-year deal. Maybe it becomes a thing where Santana DHs next year and Pratto plays first. Who knows? Because I think the primary DH this year is not going to be on the team anymore.
I agree with that.
And so
ain't going to be a right field either.
No, yeah. So Pratto can play the position really well. Bobby Witt Jr. is, a ridiculous athlete. He can play shortstop, although if Mondesi's healthy, he's probably going to play a different position. But the question is just it's approach, and it's just those strikeout numbers. Making sure you take your walks when they're there and hit the ball hard when they make a mistake.
So Witt is the player that we have, or the prospect that we spend 90% of our time discussing, right?
Yeah.
Pratto is pretty interesting, right?
He's so interesting.
Just we talk about what a wasted season last year was for minor leaguers in terms of development. There was no minor league baseball season, so it was all done, at the teams, alt sites. Thank you. And the Royals was over at community, or whatever we call it now, Legends Field, Community American Ballpark, T-Bones, Monarchs, all the names. They all apply. They all apply.
Yeah.
And there were just these mixed reviews of what it was about and did it serve any purpose. But it seemed like one player who took advantage of it was Nick Pratto.
He was written off, not by Royals front office or scouts, but I know that there were some scouts around baseball that were like, this guy's cooked, because, I mean, he was, I forgot the numbers, but they were miserable. They were like National League pitcher hitting kind of numbers.
Hunter Dozier numbers before it's 4 for 4.
Yeah. And that was, high A?
Yeah.
In 2019. And, then you lose a year. And it's like, well, I don't know, what's this guy going to be? And my God, like he seems to have really used that time productively to get that swing back. And, he's not going to be like a 320 kind of hitter, I don't think. But, God, he takes his walks and he hits line drives and hits it out of the park sometimes. I mean, he already, again, I was just looking at this yesterday, in 60 games compared to 124 in high A, So half the time basically, he's hit 15 home runs. In the 124 games, he only hit 9. His strikeout rate has actually come down. His walks, he's almost matched his walk total in 60 games. So, I mean, there's something going on there. And I'm sure that's something that we'll get into, that Lynn will get into when he's in Omaha, and we'll continue to follow, as he approaches, as he gets closer to Kansas City. But, God, that is a huge change. If that keeps up, that is an incredible success story. He's the one that's doing it.
Right.
But, there's a lot of support. Alex Zumwalt and a lot of other, just sort of, organizational support that is, kind of changing some approaches. And we've seen that, like, throughout the minor leagues. There was a stat, I'm sure you saw it, where Royals hitters' strikeout rates had gone down like 22%. And their pitcher strikeout rates had gone up like 25% or something compared to 2019. So they're doing some interesting things down there.
And it seems like Witt and Pratto are sort of tied at the hip. They're moving together. They had success in Arkansas together. They even posed for a photo outside of Warner Park up in Papillion together. So they will, I suspect, we'll see them in Kansas City together later in September.
Yeah, and that's the Royals, and they're not. There's 29 other teams that probably do something similar, but the Royals are very. They prioritize those relationships. And you remember, like, Eric Hosmer and Mike Moustakas didn't really know each other. I'm sure they had met and knew of each other, same agent. And
one was Florida, one was California.
Yeah,
high school kids.
But as soon as they got, reported to the Royals, I guess it would have been Hosmer, right? Moustakas was a year earlier.
Yeah.
They're rooming together. It's like an arranged marriage almost. and those guys are super good friends.
Right.
Probably, I think they would each call each other one of their best friends that they have. And the Royals are doing something similar. And then it's just interesting because it was before Pratto was mashing at AA. It was Bobby Witt Jr., Nick Pratto. You guys are rooming together. And I believe home and road, at least in, what city is that? Northwest Arkansas, wherever.
Yeah.
I forgot the name of the city. But anyway, it's kind of an arranged deal. And, God, it looks like pretty good cornerstones going forward.
I wonder where MJ Melendez fits into this
Yeah.
too. I mean, he's actually leading the. I don't know if it's not AAA, but maybe the division that Omaha is in. He's leading them in Northwest Arkansas in home runs. So again, just another player who is garnering attention that you kind of pin some hopes on for the future. Guy that you can see in a Royals uniform here pretty soon.
And another guy that had a miserable 2018 or 2019 season at the plate, just no production. And MJ Melendez is an interesting guy too. I mean, son of a coach, college coach, I believe, right? Just sort of lives the game and grew up like on fields and stuff like that. And I always wonder, like guys like specifically guys like that, how they handle big time struggles, because. Look, you're projecting a little bit. I imagine a guy like that, baseball is more of an identity than it is for, like Eric Hosmer, for instance. He's just in my head, but son of a firefighter.
Yeah.
It's just that's where he's always been. But he seems to handle it really well. They're very high. The Royals are very high on him. Just sort of, as a former Chiefs GM would say, high on his person, like just who he is.
I remember
sort
that
of,
former Chief GM.
as a teammate and all that. So they're just look. The big leagues is what matters, and they've been miserable this year, obviously. But there's some really interesting stuff going on, in the minors right now.
Another one is Olivares. We mentioned him earlier. I suspect. The Royals are looking at him as a future starting outfielder.
Yeah,
don't you think? I
think he's got the chance, right? Like, when
he's hitting 339 in Omaha.
Oh, he's just destroying AAA pitching. He was like a, sort of a ceiling, right? Like a little bit of a buy low with some ceiling guy when they traded the Padres for him, and but yeah, I think he's either a 4A player, he's at least that. Or he's a fourth outfielder, or he's a starting outfielder. That's the range for him right now. I don't think he's going to be a star, but he can play the position. He can play the outfield and help you there. Got some athleticism, and he needs some regular. He's just been. We can make jokes about I-29 or whatever, but God, I think he's been up and down 3, 4, 5 times.
Four times before the All-Star break. It was ridiculous.
Just give him, I don't know what it is, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, something, just some steady plate appearance. And I think they'll do that. I think they'll, I think Jorge Soler, those days are numbered.
Absolutely.
I would believe, and find out what you have in Alvarez, and see if he's a piece. Kind of what they were trying to do with Manny Rivera, and I think they were trying to get him some time at third base to see where Bobby Witt Jr. would fit later on, and then he breaks his hamate bone or whatever that is, so he's going to be out another time. But anyway, just some steady time, see what you do, and go from there.
All right, before we start talking about the Kansas City Royals, let's keep it in Omaha just for another moment. I mentioned earlier, Daniel Lynch is actually starting today's game.
Yeah.
And as soon as this show is over, tune into wherever you can tune into Omaha Storm Chasers baseball. And Jackson Kowar, in his last outing, had 8 Ks in 6 innings or 5 innings. Something, it was a really nice start for him. Are you convinced that take 2 will be different for those guys when it happens this year?
No.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced, but I'm also not convinced that these guys are garbage just because of their struggles. The talent matters, right? At some point, like Daniel, there's just not a lot of guys that are that size, that long, with a slider, fastball combination like that. Kowar with what he's got changed. Well, there's just those guys are a little bit different. And look, there's a lot of talented players that have just failed and not had any sort of big league career. So that that's sort of like the entry fee, the cover charge to get into the big leagues, and then you got to do it. But no, they've got to perform. But I get it. Like the tendency to we've seen these guys and they stunk, so move on or whatever. I get that sort of fan reaction, but they put a lot of time into these guys, and these guys have committed their lives to this, and they would be far from the first pitchers or players or whatever to come up, struggle immensely, go down, learn, wait, come back up, and have really good careers. That's what I would bet on, but right. I don't think anybody. You can't be sure about anybody, right?
Time and signing bonus money into
these
guys,
right, for sure.
So look, we're I imagine if we were doing SportsBeat Live back in 2011, 2012, we'd be having the same conversations about,
oh my God,
when is it going to happen? And aren't they years behind schedule? And
yes, yes. Every time I hear Mike Matheny doesn't know what he's doing, or whatever. Right. It's like Ned Yost was everybody's idiot, and people hated him. He's a joke. And then all of a sudden, they're going to make a statue of him someday. And he was the same guy, right. Whichever side you want to take, he was the same guy before and after. And Mike Moustakas was demoted in May or June or whatever of 2014. Yeah. And then he killed it in the postseason. Went down, just kind of mentally reset. It just reached a breaking point. Yeah, Eric Hosmer was it 2012 or 2000? I think it was 2012. Was pretty bad. And people, bust, all this stuff. Zach Green, there's just the Royals history. You don't have to have followed the Royals that long to have all these examples of guys. Lorenzo Cain couldn't stay healthy. Wade Davis stunk.
They got to do better than Escobar at shortstop.
Yes.
They got to find somebody better than Escobar.
All this stuff. And, look, that's nobody would guarantee that, Bobby Witt Jr. is going to be in the next dog pile or whatever. But, right. Just if guys have struggles, it doesn't mean that they can't get over it. And I would argue, the more I'm around baseball, the more I just really believe that the ability to handle those slumps is a very underappreciated, undervalued trait, because they all hit them, right? And it's the guys, and at that level, you're just walking on a tightrope. I don't know how these guys do it, the pitchers or the hitters. It just seems like way too hard at that level. These guys are so good. And to have just the mental, fortitude to kind of walk that tightrope, even when you're 2 for 30 or whatever, and keep going, I think that's a lot of what separates the good and the bad.
Okay, let's take a break, and when we come back, we will talk about, as unpleasant as it is, the Kansas City Royals and what's going on with the parent club.
The Kansas City Royals lineup is backed up by the region's strongest team in healthcare, the University of Kansas Health System. We both suit up with one goal in mind: to win. The University of Kansas Health System, official healthcare provider of the Royals.
Hey, welcome back to SportsBeat Live, where Sam takes a coffee break and while we talk Royals. Todd Moore asks, or doesn't ask, but suggests, set Ryan O'Hearn down and bring up a kid. We know what O'Hearn is. Let's try something else. I was kind of encouraged when O'Hearn came back, and I think it was they were on the trip where they went to New York, Boston, Texas, that road trip, and he was raking pretty good. He took advantage of the short right field at Yankee Stadium to hit a couple of home runs. I don't know what O'Hearn is now, though, when I see him on a regular basis. What's your thought on him?
He might be a 4A guy.
Yeah.
He may be one of those guys. And that's, again, I just think about how good these guys are that establish big league careers. I mean, if Ryan O'Hearn is so good at baseball, but
right.
The difference between him and Carlos Santana or, potentially Nick Pratto, it's significant. I mean, he may just be a guy, that's just not quite a big leaguer.
I've seen you use this this gesture before that when you're at the plate, the difference can be that much.
Yes.
That much between hitting the ball out of the ballpark and swinging and missing or whatever. But that's exactly right. I mean, that is exactly right. And that's true on both sides with Royals pitching, missing by that much. I think that was a problem especially for Lynch and Coar. More like that much, I guess.
Yeah,
with those guys.
Right.
But anyway, so the Royals come back from the All-Star break and they get the win over Baltimore. The team with the second worst record in Major League Baseball, the Baltimore Orioles, come to town. And the Royals look good. Whit Merrifield goes 4 for 4. Nicky Lopez, who we should probably mention a little bit later anyway, he's really playing nicely for the Royals. He had a big game, 4 RBIs. And then the Royals ran into a couple of Cy Young Award-winning pitchers in Jorge Lopez and Matt Harvey the next 2 days. Cast-offs by the Royals, by the way. Harvey came into the game with a 7.70 ERA. Yeah. Lopez, the Royals, it wasn't good enough for the Royals, but they came in and shoved. So, I mean, in a season of low points for the Royals, I think this past weekend is on the list.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, and unfortunately, people who follow the Royals have been through this before, of just sort of ranking bad. And sometimes you feel like a prisoner of the moment, right? And you forget some other ridiculous thing that happened. But it would be a low point even if it wasn't at home. And it would be a low point even if it wasn't right out the All-Star break and the third game of the All-Star break, the Royals don't have an announced starting pitcher.
Right.
And it would be a low point even if it wasn't Lopez and Harvey, who, I mean, it's just, God, man. But Dozier went 4 for 4.
He did. He did. Look, maybe it's different. Vahe wrote a nice column from Sunday's game about that, and Dozier hurt his thumb on opening day, right? Just on a swing, and it bothered him for a couple of weeks directly, and kind of indirectly bothered him for another couple of months. And I think he opened up a little bit about it.
He did. It was really interesting. And look, I know people can stop making excuses or whatever, but I thought he was accountable. I didn't feel like he was
a good way of putting it.
Whining or anything. He said, that's on me, I can't let it bother me that long. But what I thought it was all interesting, and I hope people read what Vahe wrote. I thought the most interesting thing that Dozier said was that he was trying to go the other way. Because when you watch him through the struggles, it looks like he's trying to pull everything. But because he's kind of bailing sometimes, and but in his mind, he was afraid. He kept saying getting blown up, which basically means like inside pitch or whatever. So he's trying to go the other. I just thought that was really interesting that he let it affect his swing and his approach. And it's just like you can forget like that these guys all have stuff that they're dealing with all the time, physical, mental, whatever. And he's right that I think he said that's a bad job by me. I can't let 2 or 3 days turn into 2 or 3 months.
Exactly.
And he's exactly right. That's a bad job by him. It's just interesting when you can, oh, okay, that's what was happening. Shouldn't have happened. Should have been fixed quicker, or should have been fixed by now. And we don't know if it is or not. But I thought that was interesting.
Well, and let's keep in mind, he went 4 for 4 against Orioles pitching.
Yep.
So we'll see where it goes from here.
Sure,
They're playing
totally.
the Brewers, right, the next
Yep.
couple of days. And again, I mentioned Nicky Lopez, and Lynn Worthy had a really nice story on Nicky Lopez. Just here's a guy who also kind of copped to making a mistake last year by trying to put on weight. He thought that was going to help his swing and help his power a little bit, and turns out what a mistake that was for him. It affected his swing in a negative way. He changed his approach, and now, look, he's not an all-star. He's still he's still a Gold Glove candidate second baseman. I wouldn't say that about him at shortstop, but the Royals ran an interesting graphic when he came to the plate in one of those Orioles games where he is leading, I don't know if it was the American League or the Major Leagues, in a lot of offensive categories for a number 9 hitter. So you can say the Royals are getting as much or more from Nicky Lopez than could have expected.
Yeah. This is going to be a weird way to look at it. People are probably not going to see it the same way. But I actually think long term, the experiment of trying to put on weight, good for him. Like, in my view, try it. Whit Merrifield did that. Remember his 15 eggs a day diet or whatever? And he turned himself into a much better player. He would have been a big leaguer, but now he's a guy that gets a contract extension and makes 2 All-Star games because he did get stronger and he took that chance. I'm all for it, man. Like, for Nicky Lopez to try it and then to recognize that it didn't work. And look, his body is different than Witt's. Witt's not a huge guy, but he's more equipped to
Seems like it, right?
to hit for power than Nicky Lopez. But, he kept. Remember, there was they sent him down to AAA, and he was bummed about it. And then a minute later, Mondesi's oblique went out, and so they called him back up. It was kind of an awkward.
It was
sort
that
of
spring
deal.
training. He was not going to be on the opening day roster.
Yeah, and then he was the starting shortstop on the opening day roster, and he talked a lot about, and he kept saying it like this, I just need to be Nicky Lopez. I need to be who Nicky Lopez is. I just need it, and I think that's basically what he meant, is just be a guy that you can win with and not win because of. Those guys make a lot of money,
They do.
And actually defensively at second base, he is as good as anybody. And I've thought, as the season has gone on, I've thought at shortstop he's been a little bit better. I thought he kind of struggled there in April. Not terrible,
No, not terrible.
but just
I agree. He's made some plays, defensive plays at shortstop that I thought,
Yeah.
I don't remember him doing that in April.
yeah. And it's kind of a weird deal too because originally it was that's where Bobby Witt was going to play, second base, and what does that mean for Nicky Lopez, right? And so there was a lot of up and down mental stuff that Lopez is dealing with over the last 6 months or whatever. But he's figured out kind of who he is. He's going to hit the ball hard, not far, and again be a guy that you can win with. I mean, that's if he's their starting second baseman, if this is who he is, and he's their starting second baseman and hitting ninth for the next 4 or 5 years, that's pretty good. And then that's a spot that's filled up. And then maybe Witt plays whatever, third base, Dozier goes to right, whatever. You can the pieces start to fall into place a little bit.
We should mention the best pitcher, Danny Duffy, threw pretty well in his start. As they reshuffled the rotation coming out of the All-Star break, he went 4 1/3. I was hoping he'd go 5 because by then the Royals had the big lead. I want Danny to get as many W's, even though that's less important than it ever was. But I just don't know how much longer he's going to be a Royal.
Yeah.
He seems to me, listen, he's expressed his not willingness, but just desire to stay a Royal for his entire career. And it might not happen for him. It might not. The Royals have to make some decisions about him and a couple other guys too. But What do you think about Danny Duffy and prospects of him leaving the Royals?
I mean, I'm like everybody else, right? Like I really like Danny Duffy, and I very much appreciate how he is. I mean, let's just be honest with us, with the media,
Absolutely.
also with fans, the way he interacts. I just think he's super respectful, and I'm never gonna forget like that. Eric Hosmer called him his favorite teammate of all time. Like that stuff, he doesn't just say that about, well, literally anybody else, right? And he's having a really good year, but it's just he can help somebody,
Absolutely.
He's not going to be, what, like 8 innings, 1 run, 9 strikeouts. Like maybe those days are gone, but he can get outs. He can get big leaguers out, and there's not a ton of guys left-handed that have that kind of track record. So I think he'll generate some interest. It's really interesting to me though too is he's got the 10-5 right, so he can veto a trade, and I don't know how he'd feel about that. I could see him going either way. I guess my sense is that if the Royals approached him and said, hey, the Padres or whoever is calling, we want you to know that there's an opportunity for you if you want it to play for a contender this year, but what do you think about that? I could see him saying, you know what, like let's give it a go. I want to feel that again. That's where I think he would land, but I could also see him saying, you know what, I like it here, and this is my home, and I don't want to move. It's a really interesting thing to watch for.
Well, and part of the conversation, if the Royals have that with Duffy, would be, and we could bring you back next year. You could be the rental player for the Padres.
Yep.
And
And you don't know like exactly how those conversations would go, but I wonder if they could say like, look, man, like just see if you like it somewhere else, and if you still want to come back here, we're here.
Yeah.
We love you, all those things, but just find out. Again, that's a personal decision. I could see him going either way.
What's the deadline? Is it 31st?
It's the 30th this year.
30th. Okay.
Which I think is a Friday.
Okay. It was interesting. I was telling Beth, our producer, that before we came in here, I saw that Carlos Santana was trending on Twitter, and I thought, what? Some block. First of all, I don't think if the Royals traded Carlos Santana, it would rise to the level of a Twitter trend. It turns out it's the 74th birthday of the musician Carlos Santana. So
he can help somebody though too.
yes, he can. Oh yeah, come
Switch
over,
hitter,
baby. Actually, I think Carlos Santana, the Royal, can help somebody. He's one of the veteran clubhouse guys who's been in the postseason many times.
Really well liked, and is just
Did that with the Phillies one, didn't he? He was the Phillies in like 18, I think. Didn't he do that? Interrupt his Cleveland. I may be wrong about that, but it seems like he did that once.
He's just a pain in the butt to pitch against.
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to have a 6 or 7 pitch at bat. Really well liked guy. The Royals are going to get in, and I can hear fans like rolling their eyes about this, but the Royals would have a little bit of hesitation trading him because he fits their timeline, with Nick Pratto, and he's really good for their lineup, and they don't have a lot of guys that are doing these, professional long pain in the butt at bats, and those can help other. They wouldn't trade him for anything, but if somebody gave him a big offer, maybe they would.
2018 with the Phillies.
How about that? I forgot about that.
Yeah. So, but that was a full season. That wasn't a.
God, I have no recollection of that.
Of him being a Philly, huh?
Yeah.
And okay, as we said, the Royals play the Milwaukee Brewers today at 3:15 or 3:10 first pitch, and the reason that game got moved is because of Game 6 of the NBA Finals in Milwaukee tonight. Suns Bucks. Do the Bucks close it out?
I think so.
I think so too.
I really do.
I think once a
think they
team
have
wins
to.
3 in a row after losing 2, I just think they're on this. They're on this. They've caught a wave.
And I think I don't think you want to go back Game 7 on the road. But I did see somebody on Twitter said that there was a Scott Foster sighting in Milwaukee, and he is deployed for one reason and one reason only, and that is to extend the series. So who knows?
That's right. All right, Sam. Thanks for being here today, buddy.
Thanks, Blair.
And thanks to Beth. Thanks to our sponsor, the University of Kansas Health System, and we'll do it again next Tuesday.